Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this very important meeting where Pakistan, Russia and along with the Chinese and they had a very, I would say, important discussion regarding Afghanistan. Now the important part is that there are a couple of factors that are there. Obviously, the regime of the Taliban, it has not been recognized yet by any country. The basic demand, whether it is from Pakistan or from Russia or from China or even from the Western world, is about two major factors. One is about the human rights and in particular about the women rights, and especially girls who go to school or college and those who were working earlier. What about their future? The second is obviously about the problem that still exists as the Taliban, they are not yet ready to in fact show any flexibility as far as their approach or their own version of the religion is concerned. And at the same time, another bone of contention is about the inclusive and broad-based government in Afghanistan, whereas the Taliban, their vice prime minister or the deputy prime minister, in fact stated that we have this inclusive government at the moment. We have people from the Tajik area, we have people from the Uzbek side, we have people from Hazara. But having said that, that exact number of people who should be either in the cabinet or in the main government, is that number is exactly sort of a reflection of the right number of population. People believe that about 25% of the people in Afghanistan are from the Tajik origin. About 10% are from the Uzbek region. So you can well imagine that is the kind of government that is expected to be there. But having said that, will it happen? What sort of issues are there? What sort of demands have been put by the other negotiating party? And at the same time, what sort of procedure with the Taliban are supposed to adopt in the future? Obviously, they have said that the human rights will be taken care of, and at the same time, humanitarian support should continue. The Western world has also, in fact, shown a little sort of a flexibility regarding this, and though the bias is always there, but having said that, they said that a certain amount will be given to the government of Taliban, so that the people should not suffer. But having said that, as far as their regime is concerned, the Western world, along with Pakistan also, has not yet recognized it. And they want that certain things should be, the optics should be at least there, so that they can move forward. But there is a confusion that prevails, unfortunately. Now, they will be talking about that also. But before I introduce you to my guests in our program, we have prepared a report. Let's watch that.
Since the Kabul fall and the Taliban took over Afghanistan, Pakistan as a neighbor remained assertively engaged in convincing the world powers and organizations to steer Afghanistan into a direction of prosperity. On the other hand, since the United States has pulled out, the political dynamicities in Afghanistan under the reign of Taliban further highlighted Pakistan, China and Russia's geostrategic importance in the region. This trio's congruency of multilateralist approaches regarding making Afghanistan a constructive partner in the regional economic interdependence and prosperity is the sole hope which can pull Afghanistan out of the dangers of humanitarian crisis. However, this goodwill of the three countries is heavily dependent upon the Taliban's fulfillment of the promises they made after coming to the power, including respecting human rights and the formation of an inclusive government. This concern was seen in the latest statement of the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov that Russia is still waiting for the fulfillment of promises made by the Taliban, and only after that Russia will officially accept the legitimacy of the Taliban government. The Russian Foreign Ministry, after the talks between Russia, China and Pakistan's representatives, said that Pakistan, China and Russia are willing to aid Afghanistan. However, Russia is withholding the decision to recognize the Taliban government. Hence, if Taliban want to tread Afghanistan on the way of economic prosperity, other than depending on just aid, they should try to fulfill their promises as soon as possible so that Russia, China and Pakistan could make Afghanistan a part of their multilateral and interdependent Eurasian dream and make it an economically constructive entity of the region.
Now to talk about this, we have with us in our studio, on my right is Shahid Raza Sahab. He's a geopolitical analyst. Thank you so much, Shahid Sahab, for your time. And we have with us Shaukat Paracha Sahab, who's a senior journalist and senior anchor person. Thank you so much, Paracha Sahab, for your time. And we have with us Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi Sahab, who's a senior defense analyst. General Sahab, thank you so much for your time, sir.
It's a pleasure.
The show. If you gentlemen allow me, sir, let me put the first question to General Lodi regarding this particular meeting that was held and the development that took place. General Sahab, I'm sure you are aware of what is happening at the moment. Nobody's ready to recognize the regime of the Taliban, yet the Americans at the same time, they say that the Taliban, in fact, they have no access to Afghan central bank reserves. I mean, that is something which is very worrisome for the Taliban. And having said that, they want to see the optics regarding two major issues. That seems to be the real bone of contention at the moment. One is about the humanitarian issue, sir, where you talk about the women's rights, you talk about the general rights of girls for that matter, and the second is about the inclusive and broad-based government, sir. The Taliban's Deputy Prime Minister, in fact, stated that the inclusive government is already in place because there is a representation from the Tajik side, from the Uzbek side, from the Hazara side, and so forth. Even the Shia communities also, in fact, have their own representation. But the Americans, they are not ready. Rather, the Western world is not at all ready. And is it the bias they have for the Taliban, sir, or is it a legitimate concern of the Western powers toward this particular regime? Your take, sir.
Thank you very much. I think the world presently on Afghanistan is divided into three groups, three broad groups. One is the group those who would not like this new interim government to succeed, and they would try their best and put all hurdles whereby they should either collapse or something of that sort. So, or there's a turmoil, prolonged turmoil. Excuse me. This group is led by America, its Western allies, and India, and maybe one odd Central Asian country like Tajikistan, maybe half-heartedly or whatever. There's another group of countries, led by China, Russia, Pakistan, Turkey, some Central Asian countries, and half-hearted Iran, we can say. Those who would like to see peace, and they are of course doing whatever as you already said, they're asking certain things also. And there's a third large group which is just bystander. They don't really matter as far as Afghanistan is concerned for the time being. Later on, of course, they'll be a very important group. So I think the interim Afghan government should be concentrating on the group which wants peace, this Russian-led group, a Chinese-led group. And to this group, they must listen to them very carefully. As far as American and their allies are concerned, they will not. I mean, you fulfill one thing, they will ask another thing, and you fulfill the second thing, they will ask the third thing. So they have their own agenda. I think from the Afghan government point of view, it is difficult to live without America, without IMF, without World Bank. But that difficulty they'll have to face because, in my understanding, Afghans are fiercely independent people, and they don't easily give up. And we have seen their struggle. And after such a long struggle, they will not easily, budge as far as the demands are concerned. Otherwise, also, from how many countries in the world are we asking these things? This inclusive government and women's rights and all these things. And they have already done some of the things, and they are saying so that in their opinion it is inclusive. The primary schools girls are going, and they have already said that the secondary and higher secondary girls will be going to colleges and schools very soon, but they are taking their time, which means they are in no hurry. If they are in no hurry, then one gets surprised that then how are they surviving? So it is I think a situation which is fluid, and not really one cannot discern in which direction it is going to go. But my own assessment is that this group, the one which wants peace, and I've named them also. They will, with the passage of time, become more mild as far as their demands are concerned, and Taliban can wait for that time.
All right, General Sahab. Now, Shahid Sahab, another important factor, since General Sahab mentioned that there are three different groups, one which wants peace. Let's talk about that. Let's start from there because that is more important. You talk about Russia, you talk about China, you talk about Pakistan, Turkey, neighboring countries like Iran for that matter, and the fallout factor could be on these if there is a proper unwanted kind of a turmoil, sir, which the Western world and all these countries can practically prevent. But having said that, maybe it's the arm twisting technique of the Western world towards the Taliban, or perhaps they are trying to exert more pressure on them. Actually, this is the case. Now, 3 countries, in fact, believe that they will financially support. China, Russia and Pakistan have agreed to that. Do you think, sir, that kind of a support, will it be enough? Because when you look at the history, the kind of money that the Americans have spent, or they have shown they have spent, I mean, that is some huge amount of money. And when it comes to Russia, obviously we do understand that they have their own economic challenges. Pakistan currently is not in a state to look after the affairs of another country where we have our own very genuine and concerned issues. And then comes the Chinese. But historically speaking, the Chinese never give you aid. They would always invest in infrastructure and rebuilding process, perhaps. How do you see this equation settling, sir?
Thank you, Faisal. First of all, the most important element we need to understand is the nightmare scenario. So economic collapse in Afghanistan will create a Frankenstein's monster, not only for the region from a security perspective, but globally as well. So the global community and the Americans who are showing unjustified reluctance to unfreeze Afghan funds, they should understand that if the Afghan economy collapses, it will create a security situation that will threaten everybody. Number 2, countries can survive in isolation. North Korea is one example, Iran is one example. And coming to the region, if you look at, for example, Russia, if you look at China or Pakistan, Afghanistan, even if the Western countries impose isolation on the Taliban administration, they can continue to survive as long as they have good working relationship with the Troika, with Pakistan, Russia and China, the big 3 powers of this region. Why? Because Afghanistan is home to enormous amount of natural wealth. It includes rare earth minerals, especially some very important metals that are used in modern technology, for example, lithium. It is believed to have one of the largest reserves of lithium in the world. China, Russia are very interested in those resources. So even if the Western countries do not recognize the Taliban or do not follow the path of cooperation and instead impose sanctions on the Taliban administration and try to use the carrot and stick approach with the Taliban, it is unlikely to work as long as the Taliban can strike a compromise with the regional powers. So it will nullify the impact of the Western powers, and they will actually lose further and further influence in the entire Central Asian region. So I feel that...
Don't you think they have already lost that influence, especially after the haphazard exit of the Americans?
Well, they have lost a very significant portion of the influence in the Central Asian region, but we need to keep this in mind that the Americans are very interested in maintaining a certain level of presence in Central Asia for understandable reasons, because Central Asia is sandwiched between 2 of the major powers that America wants to contain, China and Russia. So the geostrategic importance of Central Asia cannot be undermined, and Afghanistan is the centerpiece of Central Asia. So I do not think that going forward, Americans are going to remain isolated from the situation in Afghanistan. Obviously, they are pressurizing the Afghan administration at the moment with carrot and stick tactics in order to draw as many concessions as they see it, as you've rightly pointed out, optics. For them, it is all about optics. It is about
seeing is believing.
Seeing is believing, and what they're able to tell their public that, oh, we went there, we spent so much money. Most of that money, by the way, were actually paid to the American contractors and never
back,
actually, it never landed in Afghanistan. It was paid to the American defense contractors, the $1 trillion figure that is quoted sometimes. It never landed in Afghanistan. So it is all about optics for the Western countries. They need to maintain that, white messiah image. Domestically speaking, that we spent 20 years in Afghanistan and it's a better place. Well, it is not. When the Americans left Afghanistan, they left it in a much worse condition than they actually had, because Afghanistan's economy has completely collapsed as it is right now.
Unfortunately, that's what the reality is. Now, Paracha Sahab, another very interesting demand of the countries, which even include Russia, China and even Pakistan, they believe that a modern version of Islam should be implemented, not the one which was earlier implemented by the Taliban from 96 onwards till 2001. Now, so earlier, before the start of the show, Shahid Sahab and we were having a discussion, we were thinking that what is acceptable to the Taliban, sir? You can't expect them to be modern within a day or two. It is going to be a long-term procedure, sir. They'll have to negotiate and renegotiate at the same time. They also have to show some sort of flexibility. But it seems that now there is a proper tussle going on, sir. Because the Taliban currently, they're not in a mood. When the Deputy Prime Minister was asked, sir, about the broad-based and inclusive government, he said it is already there. So, I mean, this kind of an attitude from the Taliban side, and again, the pressure from the Western side, so do you think that is going to end up in a turmoil, or do you think it can be fruitful? I mean, it can yield some sort of positive results?
Thank you very much. If Afghanistan can survive alone, then why everyone is saying from Pakistan or Afghanistan that world should get engaged with us, you know. And if Afghanistan should not accept the dictates, why Pakistan is trying to fulfill the FATF conditions, you know. Why for GSP plus of 2 billion sterling pounds or euros, you know, why we implemented 27 UN covenants and conventions, you know.
Correct.
I mean, if Afghanistan wants to be part of the international community, it's not the United States or not the Great Britain or not France or Germany. You heard Sergei Lavrov today, you know, and he was also saying that they have to fulfill the promises.
Yes.
Tajik president said so. Uzbek president said so. I am talking of SCO, you know, summit where I heard all of them, you know. So, the Americans or the Western, they could be biased. But what about Pakistan itself? I mean, we are asking the world to get engaged. We have not recognized why. But look at the policies, you know. I mean, if that's such
This is wait and see policy, sir.
everyone is following then we should not isolate one or two countries that they are doing, you know, something wrong or some atrocity. If we ourselves, and I believe we have the most, you know, a deeper stake in Afghanistan, not because that we want to rule them, khuda na khasta, you know, because it has a direct implication on Pakistan, whatever happened there, you know. If there are Taliban, it has its own implications. If there are Ashraf Ghanis or Karzais over there, that has its own implications, you know. So, to begin with, you know, and then, you know, for $6 billion, we are accepting the dictates, every dictate of IMF. And Afghans have $10 billion, their own money deposited in the United States.
That's not even a loan.
Not a loan, you know. So, I think let us be realistic, and it was a good beginning in Doha again, you know, when last weekend, you know, Taliban representative and the US representative, they met over there. Humanitarian assistance is there, and it has been flowing from so many countries, including Pakistan. But we are not talking of humanitarian crisis or humanitarian assistance. We are talking of legitimacy of Afghan Taliban's government, that the world should recognize them, hand over the Afghans' money back to them, so that they can run their country, so that they can run their institutions. And here are the other side. I am excluding United States at the moment. I am talking of today's statement by Russian foreign minister. I am talking of the Chinese you know, perception.
All of them, by the way. Yeah.
I am talking of the Central Asian perception about this scenario. So, all cannot be wrong, including Pakistan. All what you are saying, a modern, you know, form of governance over there. I mean, there are certain set of rights, and I told you 27 international covenants that Pakistan had to ratify. Not only accept them, but ratified them, you know, and that's, you remember, you know, and that's why GSP plus was allowed for Pakistan. And look at FATF today, you know, it's from tomorrow is a FATF day, and we all are worried that if we are in the grey list, it has its own implications, you know. If we are pushed to the blacklist, or if we are not, you know, brought back to normal, you know, problems will be for Pakistan. Why not we also think about Afghans? If they have the problems, and Pakistan being equal sovereign to every country in the world, more sovereign than others, I believe, because we are sovereign country, alhamdulillah. But still we are accepting FATF, 27 plans were there, then 7 additional have come up, and we are just giving a very smiley picture that okay, we are following it, we are implementing your plans. Then when it comes to Afghanistan, and if there is some suggestion from Central Asia, from Russia, from Pakistan, from China, why we think that it's a Western intrigue or conspiracy against them, If Afghanistan can survive, well and good. Nobody should talk about that. The world should engage them, should be a partner with them, and then we should not expect that there must be a humanitarian assistance.
Raja Saab, now currently, because the winter is approaching, and in Afghanistan the winter is very harsh.
Always very harsh.
Always
very harsh.
So when you're talking about a huge shortage of food, you're talking about lack of medical facilities. But most of these NGOs, they are no more there to look after the daily affairs of the Afghan public, sir. And then Pakistan, currently, as you rightly mentioned, whether it's about FATF or is it about this issue of IMF, Pakistan at the end of the day said, look where dollar is, look where the overall economic indicators, look at the price hike, look at the inflation. I mean, it is right in front of you. We are not in a state, I wish we were, but we are not in a state to look after another country with a population of 4 crore. So that's what concerns me.
If I carry forward your argument, if we cannot do that, we cannot confront them, why then we are teaching Afghan to confront them, Why not then, there must be, instead of a rhetoric, instead of a sentimental, reaction or jerk reaction from us, from anyone, Let's be realistic. If Pakistan is following, it's not a dictate what FATF is trying to impose.
It has become a political issue now.
That's what I am saying. Thank you very much. That's what I am saying.
It's no more about the digits and the numbers
your performance. That's exactly what I am saying. I think the better course of action is Taliban must approach everyone. They must be willing to talk to everyone. They must be willing to listen to everyone, so that they can get reintegrated in the world. Americans are gone now. The way they had to leave, it's enough to teach them a lesson that they will not come to Afghanistan again. But the question is the survival of Afghans. I am not saying Afghanistan. The survival of Afghans, the people, you are very right. Winter is approaching. Already snowfall is there.
That's what I'm saying, sir.
How they will survive? They need water, they need food, they need to
basic necessities.
Basic necessities. Qatar is helping them, Pakistan is helping them, China, I must say, I believe they will be helping them. Even the United States, through different UN organization, World Food Program, they are also sending supplies. But the bigger question is the viability of the state that is now in the control of Afghan Taliban.
All right. Now, Jalsab, coming back to you now, there is another very interesting development. That is about Zalmay Khalilzad, sir. He is no more the person to look after the affairs, in Afghanistan. He was I would say, the chief negotiator, but he was labeled as somebody who was very weak. He wasn't hard enough on the Taliban as far as the overall negotiation process was concerned. This is something which the Americans strongly believe. Do you think, sir, there is going to be a replacement of Zalmay Khalilzad, or perhaps something can, appear in the form that now there is going to be another person looking after the affairs, and let's get back to square one and let's restart everything again, sir? And then, certain, I would say, relaxations could be given to the Taliban regime.
Zalmay Khalilzad did a good job. Whatever was the mandate that was given to him was that we should bring them on the table and we should negotiate and all that. But yes, now he is no more required because the interest of America in Afghanistan is not of that level as it was before. So I don't think that they will appoint another special representative for Afghanistan, because Afghanistan for them is now like any other country, any other third world country in which they have an interest, but not that strong interest as it was earlier. As Paracha Sahab was saying, and I agree with him, that Pakistan is, whatever Pakistan is saying and doing, I don't think it is a rhetoric. Pakistan is, pursuing a very balanced approach. Pakistan is talking both sides that we are also trying to convince Taliban that what the world is expecting from them, please do something, and also appealing to the world that they cannot survive without our help and all that. Actually, the problem is just like a chicken and egg problem. That what should happen first? Uh, this Taliban regime has been isolated from the world affairs for a very long time. It cannot be compared with Pakistan at all. Pakistan is a part of the world system for a very long time. So the way we behave is very different. So they have yet to learn how to integrate themselves with the world at large. So they have to be dealt with accordingly. This cannot happen overnight. It is going to take some time. So those of us who are saying more vehemently, which the Paracha Sahib is saying that rhetoric, we are just saying that we need to be more careful in handling Afghan Taliban because they are not a normal regime. They are not a normal government. We must see that what have they faced in the last 20 years and how they have freed their country and how they have come to power. So this world is not a level playing field. I don't agree with those who think that America has any love lost for Afghanistan. But yes, those who have some affinity, like Raza was saying, countries like Russia, China, Pakistan, Turkey, Afghans must listen to them. But one thing I am quite certain, I do not know what are the assessment of others. Afghans are going to survive, irrespective whether the world gives them aid or no aid, because there is some aid which will keep going, keep trickling, and Afghanistan is not going to face hunger as long as Pakistan is there, because we know that with the wheat that we produce, the things that we produce, there is a proper quantity earmarked for Afghanistan, and that keeps going. Unless we face famine, Afghans will not die of hunger. And if they don't die of hunger, they don't care. I'm talking about this Afghan, regime. So whether somebody likes it or not, the thing is, in my opinion, and I can be wrong, some of the demands are unfair that we are, asking for. For example, it will take some time for them to clear their areas from the extremists and terrorists, especially those terrorists which have been brought by America, like Daesh and like ISIK, and you must be remembering, Karzai saying that unmarked helicopters were dropping these people there.
Yes.
That is a fact. So give them time to do that, and we are not ready to help them also. So this recognition will help them in a way that they will actually integrate. The communication will get open. So on one side we don't want to talk to them, and on the other side we expect that they should get integrated with the world. This is a very strange argument. I don't buy that.
Now, Jalal Sahab, another very important, since you talked about the law and order situation and you talked about the kind of support Pakistan can give to the Taliban. Sir, recent events, talking about law and order now. Sir, last Friday there was a bomb blast and unfortunately around 60-70 persons were killed.
Very sad. Very sad.
Then prior to that, sir, Friday there was another bomb blast in Kunduz. Over 100 people were killed. Right. Then you talk about the incident, unfortunate incident at the Kabul airport, in which almost 170 people were killed, including 13 US soldiers. Now, my point is, sir, and ISIS claiming all the responsibilities, sir, on one end, the Taliban are under attack, I would say, from within, right, and then the pressure which has been imposed on them from the outside. And still we expect them to do more. I mean, this is kind of a do more, to go after all those factions, whether it's TTP, that is the demand of Pakistan. You talk about, for example, this IMU, Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan. Again, the Taliban are supposed to look after that. You talk about issues on the Chinese border. The Taliban are supposed to look after that. Presence of Daesh. I mean, so many non-state actors. And on top, we have also learned that the West wants India to be a part of this entire process, and they should have some sort of a role, sir. Let's talk about that.
Right. We must compare this, to today's Afghan situation. Let us compare it with the 20 years of which have just gone. Do you think there was any less bloodshed? And we were not getting the proper reports. Now these reports nowadays, they are being multiplied and they are being exaggerated because it suits the West. But when the same number of people died earlier, they would like to suppress those news, and we understand that what I am saying. And also compare it with the war on terror that we are fighting. For how many years we are dealing with these people, and still there are blasts. So expecting Afghans to do all this in 2 months or 3 months, it is mind-boggling. And who on earth would think that, once the Americans are behind this ISIK, Indians are behind this, Daesh and ISIK, and they are making sure that they get support and they keep on attacking them. And we want that within 2 months there should have been a peace over there. It is not going to happen, my dear. It has not happened in the last 20 years, once the Americans themselves were here. It has not happened in Pakistan, where we are struggling for the last 20 years. So please give me some argument that how do you think that this Afghan government is not doing well? With whom are you comparing?
I mean, obviously that is a very legitimate concern. Now, Shahid sir, 2-3 important issues. One is about the capacity of the Afghan Taliban, because I was reading an article in which they said we need some sort of a support. Perhaps they were more concerned about the people of Afghanistan rather than the military support. So that means that they are pretty much okay as far as the military assets that they've been able to get hold of, that is concerned. So they can operate against all these. But sir, again, I'll totally agree with Jan Saab, because whenever we used to talk about the Syrian issue or the Iraqi issue, that was a time when we got to know that certain rebel groups are being supported by the Western world, especially by the French and the Americans and the British also. And those rebels eventually turned out to be members of IS, or they, in fact, we heard this, IS or this Iraq and Syria. Islamic State under the command of Mr. Baghdadi, right sir? Now interestingly, when we hear that, and you are talking about somebody who was the former president, Mr. Hamid Karzai, mentioned about the mystery helicopters, and they would drop the loads at wrong places to support certain groups. Sometimes they would airlift people if they were under attack, or sometimes they would bring in people from the other side. Obviously, they haven't walked all the way from Syria and Iraq via Iran into Afghanistan. There was something going on at that time as well. What I'm saying is, sir, if they are supported, these are the proxies. We understand that. These were the proxies which were very, I would say, efficiently eliminated from the Arab world. But, sir, now, ISK, Islamic State of Khorasan, we never heard of it. I mean, we used to talk about it, that could be, but now there is a clear-cut presence. Do you think, sir, this engagement of the Western world with the Indians on these lines could actually be a problem? Because at the end of the day, sir, the Indians will not like the Taliban regime there. Simple as that. Or the Western world. That is again. So they are very much on the same page when this equation is talked about. Do you see the elimination of the non-state actors through the Taliban regime, or you believe that certain massive steps should be taken and will be taken?
Faisal, I think it's a very important debate. The Taliban administration at this point are being pressured internally and externally through different instruments to draw several concessions from them. Western countries are doing it. We just saw from a statement from Sergei Lavrov and Dmitry Peskov that basically that sums it up. Wait and see. So we are not expecting a breakthrough. We are just waiting and seeing, and talking to the Taliban and finding out avenues of cooperation. So what are those avenues of cooperation? So you've already pointed out India's interests. They would be interested in destabilizing the Taliban administration by all means possible, like they did in the mid-90s by supporting the Northern Alliance. There's an interesting symmetry between Tajikistan that is supporting the so-called National Resistance Front. They are expected to create problems for the Taliban, and Taliban have already actually deployed some military assets along the Tajik-Afghan border to prevent any such activity from happening. This is something that skipped the news. It was a very important development. Taliban
so there was a lot of presence of the Tajik forces, and even the Russians, they have also made certain bases operational there. So
in this context, I think because ISK not only threatens Afghanistan, it's a regional proxy. So it threatens Iran, it threatens Pakistan, it threatens China, it threatens Russia. So in this context, what is likely to happen is that these countries, the troika, regional troika of Russia, Pakistan and China, will have to step up and play a role to ensure that the so-called ISKP, whether it's a bona fide militant organization or it's just a new name for Blackwater, we don't know. Whatever it is.
The second statement seems more correct.
Yeah, so whatever the case is, the regional troika has to step up and cooperate with the Taliban administration to make sure that these elements are eliminated from Afghan soil once and for all. So regional security is ensured. This is a common interest where a complete alignment of interests exists. Even countries like Tajikistan that are currently opposing the Taliban politically, they are also aligned on the question of instability, on the question of Uzbekistan Islamic Movement or other organizations that might spread to Central Asia and create instability, not only for the Central Asian countries but also for Russia. So there is a symmetry of interest. But the Russian approach and the Chinese approach and the Pakistani approach at this point seems to be, to seek cooperation with the Taliban on practical means. So security, non-negotiable. Economy, I already mentioned that there is a lot of interest in Afghan resources. And by the way, I already mentioned that Afghanistan is home to the largest lithium reserve in the world. Lithium is the material of today and tomorrow. It's the material of, it is the new oil.
Batteries, yeah. It's energy.
It is the new oil, right? So if China, imagine a world where China brings in significant investment and Taliban provides security to extract Afghanistan's lithium reserves, China will have an unfair advantage, even dominance over the global renewable energy market as far as the storage and batteries and other electronic equipment is concerned. That is going to be a significant concern for the Western countries because trade war is already happening between the Western world and China.
It's worst at the moment.
This is a very important tool that the Taliban have at this point. They can literally swing the battle of technological minerals one way or another because they have them, right? They are in possession of rare earth minerals, they are in possession of lithium, and the current conflict between the Western world and China is between who has access to these rare earths, these minerals.
This could be the next battleground.
It is.
For the two major mega superpowers, China and United States of America.
That's exactly where it's headed, and Taliban leadership understands this. So they are going to play this very smartly. They are going to seek cooperation from China in return for economic investment, so they don't actually go down, they don't go under. And as General Saab pointed out, as long as Pakistan is there, we will ensure that they have their basic necessities, food and humanitarian aspect is met. But it is a liability on Pakistan, being a neighbor, being a Muslim country as well. It is a liability on Pakistan to make sure that Afghanistan does not see a famine, and that is unlikely to happen as long as Pakistan is there, and I would agree with that. But long term, Taliban are actually playing a very smart strategy at this point. They understand that the world is now divided into a multipolar structure, and they're talking to all poles that exist in the geopolitical world. They're talking to the Chinese, they're talking to the Russians, they're talking to the Europeans, and they're talking to the Americans. So I don't think that the current stalemate is going to exist for a long time. They're taking slow reformative measures because Taliban, frankly speaking, have to appeal to their own constituency. Mm-hmm. That is a conservative constituency. They have to worry about their own kind of optics, right? So the evolutionary process in social
that's
reform
a very confusing kind of a picture.
World.
I mean, it's blur, yet I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, if it was simple, it would have been resolved.
Raza Saab had $1 million smile on his face. So, now the point is, Raza Saab, the reason behind this smile, if you may take this as a question.
No, please put your question.
The thing is now that Raza Saab, it is not as simple. 2 plus 2 is not 4 in Afghanistan. One has to understand that. So many proxies, whether you talk about China and USA, you talk about Pakistan and India. Let me be very fair. You talk about the influence of Iran towards the Tajik government or the Northern Alliance, and there is a direct conflict between all these. I mean, yes, it is. And it is not an ideal world, sir, where you are my Muslim brother and I'm going to give my life for you. No, sir, it doesn't work like that. Otherwise, no Muslim countries would have been fighting, The point is, sir, that forget this Muslim brotherhood for a moment. Let's talk about the reality. And the reality is this, that money makes the mayor go. Money is what
so
the
you have
important part is.
responded to my smile, in fact.
So I wanted to give you a little push.
No, it's not a push. It's a reality, I mean, from security angle, from security perspective, ETIM, that has been a danger to China,
Yes.
more than for Afghanistan. China was more concerned about ETIM, and that is in the region from Xinjiang to the Central Asian region. So, we talk about Tajikistan, there was a rebellion in Uzbekistan, about this Taliban movement when they were previously, and in Tajikistan they had a fight in the streets of Dushanbe, there was a fight. Russia has always been concerned about rise of extremism or terrorism in its components, and Chechnya was one of the soft corners of Russia for
a very
quite
long
some time,
The Black Widows and all
So,
this. Yeah.
should we expect Russia, China and Central Asian states that they are with Taliban and they are not demanding anything, first you have very rightly pointed out, the first they are concerned to their own interests, I mean China for example, there was a mastermind of ETIM and he was killed in Gilgit somewhere.
Baltistan.
His name was Muhammad Masoom was his name, and there was a great concern. I believe General Saab can recall or he remembers these episodes, you see. So, it is not that far away the American they are sitting and they are concerned to these developments. The people sitting very next door to Afghanistan including Iran, they are far more concerned, and that is why this, when you say confusion or I say problem, the problem is of within the region, ETM, ISK, and for that matter ISIS is also from this region. Middle East is not very far away from here, and there has been also comments I have been confronting.
How many people went from Pakistan to join ISIS?
From Mandi Bahauddin, for example, give you a precise example, and so many people have been talking like this, that now Daesh and Taliban, they will fight against each other for protecting the interest of the Americans, When these problems are of this region, ETIM, again I will say, because Chinese they are very much concerned about it, Russian they are very much concerned about, and then Turkey has to protect the interests of Turkic speaking people, mostly the Central Asian republics, the Turkmen, not only Turkmen is people from Turkmenistan, but these Turkic speaking people, 4-5 states, Similarly, Pakistan, how many times Prime Minister has talked about Taliban as Pashtuns? During his recent speeches, Prime Minister of Pakistan has talked about many times about Pashtuns, Adaras for example, people from Herat, they have their affinity to Iran. So, these are very complicated things, you see. I mean 3-4 years back similar arguments were here in Pakistan that we have Sandak gold and we have so many things. After 3.5 years now we are begging the IMF that we have raised the price of electricity, we have dropped the petrol bump, and still you are not releasing $1 billion of the loan that you have promised to us. In practical terms, in real terms, the wishful thinking, I am sorry General Saab thought I was talking to him as a rhetoric. No, General Saab, I was just talking in a general terms, I cannot dare, he is so respectable to me.
In the general term?
Yeah, in the not in general terms.
Okay.
Yeah. So, he is highly respectable to me, he has a vision, he has a thought that I always learn from him, It is a general comment, you see, not not the way you picked it now, So, in a world which is a global village, that every development in one part of the world, it directly implicates the other part of the world. So, we have to be part of the world, and so has the right of Afghanistan that it needs to be part of the world.
Well, let us see, things do get settled down, but I am not sure what exactly is going to happen, but sir, at the end of the day, I believe in one thing, that perhaps the role of Ahmed Masood or the role of Rashid Dostum for that matter will be very important to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, again, Rashid, those
Commander Ismail is very important, you know.
General Ismail
Khalid,
definitely
yes,
is. I mean, I fail to understand how come he surrendered with 7,000-8,000 of his soldiers and without firing a single bullet. I mean, there has to be some sort of negotiation with him. But I think the overall situation is still very, very fluid in Afghanistan. But we can always hope and pray things to get better. Raza, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shahid, it was a pleasure having you. General Saab, thank you so much for your presence as well. So it's always a pleasure to have you. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take good care. Khud Hafiz.